The stars looked the same everywhere in the galaxy, but Captain Vex Corridon knew better. Some parts of space were darker than others, and the Terran exclusion zone was the darkest of them all. Vex stood on the bridge of the Crimson Talon, his scaled green hands gripping the command console. His crew moved around him with practiced efficiency. They were pirates, yes, but they were good at what they did. The best, some said. They had raided merchant vessels across 12 sectors and never lost a single crew member. That kind of success came from being smart, not just bold. "Captain, the signal is getting stronger," said Mira, his communications officer. She was a Quellan, with 4 arms and eyes that could see in infrared. "It's definitely coming from inside the exclusion zone." Vex felt his throat tighten. Every pirate in the Outer Rim knew about the exclusion zone. It was a massive region of space that the Galactic Council had sealed off 247 years ago. Nobody knew why. Ships that went in never came back. The official story was that it was a quarantine zone, but nobody knew what was being quarantined. Some said it was a plague. Others whispered about experiments gone wrong. The humans had controlled that space once, but then they vanished. "Just like that, gone. What kind of signal?" Vex asked. "A distress beacon. Old format. Pre-exclusion," Mira replied. "It's human." The bridge went quiet. Human ships were valuable. Their technology was different from anything else in the galaxy, even centuries old. A single intact human vessel could set them up for life, but the cost might be too high. "Captain, we should leave," Garrick said. The first mate was a massive Krulon, built like a boulder with tusks that could tear through metal. He was the most cautious member of the crew, which was saying something. Nothing good comes from that place. Vex looked at the screen, showing the boundary of the exclusion zone. It was marked by automated warning buoys that had been broadcasting the same message for over 2 centuries. "Warning, restricted space, entry forbidden by Galactic Council Order 2178. Violators will be considered lost." "How much do you think a human colony ship is worth?" Vex asked the room. His pilot, a thin Vaxian named Skeet, whistled low. "Millions. Maybe tens of millions if the cargo hold is full. And how many more years do we want to spend robbing cargo haulers for scraps?" Vex continued. He was talking to his crew, but also to himself. He was tired. Tired of running, tired of looking over his shoulder, tired of counting credits and wondering if they would be enough. "We have cloaking technology," Vex said. "We get in, grab what we can, and get out. Quick and clean." Garrick shook his head. "The ships that disappeared had cloaking tech too. Better than ours?" "Then we're careful," Vex said. His decision was made. He could see it on their faces. They were scared, but they were also greedy. And greed always won in the end. "Mira, plot a course. Skeet, engage cloak the moment we cross the boundary. Everyone else, battle stations. If something moves, I want to know about it." The Crimson Talon turned toward the darkness. Crossing the boundary felt like passing through water. The sensors flickered, and for a moment every screen on the bridge went black. Then they came back online, but the readings were wrong. Energy signatures appeared and disappeared. The gravitational sensors showed impossible readings, as if space itself was bent in ways it shouldn't be. "Captain, the cloak is holding, but our sensors are going crazy," Skeet said. His voice was higher than usual. "I'm seeing something big out there. Really big. But it keeps vanishing from the scans." "Can you track the distress beacon?" Vex asked. "Yes, it's 3 million kilometers ahead. There's something else too. Lots of somethings. I'm reading dozens of ships, all dead in the water. A ship graveyard." Vex felt a chill run down his spine. "Are any of them recent?" "No, Captain. The newest readings are over 100 years old. Most are older than that." They moved slowly through the darkness, and soon the graveyard came into view. Ships of every size and species floated in the void like ancient monuments. Some were burned and broken. Others looked perfect, as if their crews had simply stepped out for a moment. In the center of it all was a massive vessel with human markings. "That's the U.S. Prometheus," Mira said, reading the hull designation. "A colony ship. It went missing 247 years ago with 10,000 people on board. The ship was enormous, built to carry an entire civilization to a new world. It should have been dark and dead, but lights glowed in some of the windows. Power was still running. Life signs?" Vex asked. Mira worked her console, her forearms moving quickly. "Yes, faint, but there. In the cryo section. Captain, someone is still alive on that ship." Vex made his decision. "Garrick, take a boarding team. Find out what's on that ship and if there's anything we can take. Be quick and be smart." Garrick nodded and left the bridge with 6 crew members. Vex watched the Prometheus on the screen. Something felt wrong. After 247 years, why were the lights still on? Who had been maintaining the ship? And why had the distress beacon activated now? In the darkness beyond the graveyard, something moved. The sensors caught it for just a second before it disappeared again. Something enormous watching them from the void. Vex's hands tightened on the console. They had crossed into forbidden space, and now they would learn why it had been forbidden in the first place. Garrick's boots made soft, magnetic thuds as he walked through the airlock into the Prometheus. His team spread out behind him, weapons ready, scanning every corner. The air inside was cold but breathable. Emergency lights cast everything in a dim blue glow. "This is wrong," said Teve, the team's engineer. "Power systems should have failed decades ago, but everything is running. Life support, gravity, even the interior lights. Something has been maintaining this ship." They moved through empty corridors. The walls were covered in human writing, signs pointing to different sections. Medical bay, engineering, crew quarters, cryo storage. Everything was clean, no dust, no debris. It was like the crew had left yesterday. "Garrick, you need to see this," called out Rix, one of the scouts. He was standing at a window overlooking a massive chamber. Inside were rows upon rows of cryopods, stretching into the darkness. Thousands of them, and their status lights were green. "They're alive," Teve whispered. "All of them. 10,000 humans, still in cryosleep after 247 years. Garrick pressed his communicator. "Captain, we have a situation. The colonists are alive, still frozen, and something has been keeping them that way." Vex's voice crackled back. "Can you access the ship's computer? I need to know what happened here." They found the bridge. It was smaller than expected for such a large ship, designed with human ergonomics. Everything was made for creatures much smaller than Garrick. He had to duck under doorways. TV sat at the captain's console and began working through the human interface. "I'm in," Tivy said after a few minutes. "The logs are intact, accessing the final entries." The screen flickered, and a human face appeared. She was the captain, her uniform crisp, her expression tired. She looked afraid. "Captain's log, final entry," the woman said. 3 days ago, we received a message on all channels. Every human ship, every colony, every station across the galaxy received it at the same time. The message was simple. Protocol, midnight. Return to origin. Quarantine protocols in effect. We tried to contact Earth, but there was no response. Then we saw other human ships turning around, leaving their missions, heading back to Sol system. Something is happening. Something big. The recording jumped forward. The captain looked worse now, like she hadn't slept. "We're being recalled. All of humanity. But we've been reading reports. Classified reports that leaked across the networks before they shut down communications. There's something called the awakening. Humans are changing. The reports are confusing, contradictory. Some say it's evolution, others say it's a disease. Whatever it is, Earth wants every human back in Sol system before it spreads. They're sealing off the entire sector." Another jump. The captain was crying now. "We made a choice. The crew voted. We don't know what the awakening is, but the reports are terrifying. Humans developing abilities that shouldn't be possible. Cities torn apart. Ships destroyed by their own crews. We decided to put ourselves in cryo-sleep rather than go back, rather than become whatever they're becoming. We programmed the ship's AI to maintain the pods indefinitely and to send a distress signal if rescue ever became possible. God forgive us for what we've left behind. God help those who remained." The recording ended. The team stood in silence. Garrick felt his skin crawl. The humans had been running from their own people, from whatever they had become. What could make an entire species seal themselves away? Rix asked quietly. Before anyone could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the Prometheus. Red lights flashed. TV's console lit up with warnings. "Something just activated the ship's proximity sensors," Tevi said, his voice rising. "Multiple contacts. moving fast. They're surrounding us. Garrick's communicator burst to life. Garrick, get back to the ship now, Vex shouted. Something just appeared. It's big and it's heading right for us. Through the bridge windows, Garrick saw something emerge from the darkness. A ship, but unlike anything he had ever seen. It was sleek and organic, its hull shifting with patterns of light that seemed alive. It moved without engines, gliding through space like a creature swimming through water. Move, Garrick roared. They ran through the corridors back toward their boarding ship. Behind them, they heard something that made Garrick's blood freeze. A voice over the Prometheus's speakers, calm and clear. Unauthorized presence detected. Initiating containment protocols. Doors began sealing throughout the ship. Garrick and his team barely made it through the last one before it closed. They piled into their boarding craft and disengaged from the Prometheus. As they flew back toward the Crimson Talon, Garrick watched the strange ship position itself between them and escape. It was easily 3 times the size of their vessel, covered in technology that seemed to blend machine and biology. Captain, we're cut off, Garrick reported. I see it, Vex replied. Get back here, we're going to try something. The boarding craft docked and Garrick rushed to the bridge. On the main screen, the alien ship waited. No, not alien, Garrick realized. Human. This was a human ship, but it had evolved far beyond anything humanity had possessed 2 centuries ago. We're being hailed, Mira said. Put it through, Vex ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was human, but had a strange quality to it, as if multiple people were speaking in perfect harmony. You have violated quarantine protocol. Prepare for containment and judgment. Vex stepped forward. We're just salvagers. We didn't know anyone still claimed this space. We'll leave immediately. Impossible. You have seen what should remain hidden. You will be processed. Vex's hand moved toward the weapons console, but before he could give the order, every system on the Crimson Talon went dark. Not just the main power. Everything. Backup systems, emergency lights, even the hand terminals the crew carried. All of it died at once. In the darkness, Garrick heard something attached to their hull. Boarding pods. They were being boarded. Something had found them in the dark. Something that had once been human. Emergency lights flickered back on, casting the bridge in a red glow. Vex could hear his crew breathing heavily, their fear filling the air like smoke. Through the hull, they heard the sound of cutting tools. The boarding pods were breaking through their defenses like paper. Weapons, Vex ordered. Everyone arm yourselves. Garrick distributed plasma rifles to the crew. They took positions around the bridge entrance, waiting. Vex had been in dozens of fights, but this felt different. They weren't being attacked. They were being harvested. The cutting sound stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the bridge doors opened without anyone touching the controls. They simply slid apart as if the ship itself had decided to betray them. What walked through the doorway looked human at first glance, but only at first glance. They were tall, easily 2 meters, moving with a fluid grace that seemed to ignore gravity. 5 of them entered the bridge wearing suits that looked like they had grown from their skin rather than been put on. The material was dark and shifting like oil on water. Their eyes reflected light like an animal's, glowing faintly in the dim room. The led figure was a woman. Her face was still recognizably human, but perfected in a way that was unsettling. No scars, no imperfections, just smooth skin and those strange reflective eyes. She looked at each crew member in turn, and Vex felt like she was seeing through him, reading every thought, every secret. Lower your weapons, she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. They will not function. We have disabled all energy weapons within 30 meters. TV pulled his rifle's trigger. Nothing happened. The power cell was dead. Garrick roared and charged, his massive bulk moving surprisingly fast. The woman didn't move. One of her companions raised a hand and Garrick stopped in mid-stride. He struggled against nothing, held in place by invisible force. His eyes were wide with shock and fear. Please don't make this harder than necessary, the woman said. She gestured and Garrick was gently lowered to the ground, released from whatever had held him. We are not here to harm you. We are here to contain a breach in protocol. Vex stepped forward, keeping his hands visible. Who are you? My name is Sentinel Kira Osworth. I am part of the Boundary Watch. We monitor the exclusion zone and prevent unauthorized entry. You're human. Vex said, yes. though not as you remember us. Kira looked around the bridge with what might have been nostalgia. Your ship is well designed, efficient. The pirates of the Outer Rim have improved their technology since we left. You know who we are? We know everything that happens in the galaxy, Kira said. We watch, we listen. We have never stopped being part of the larger community, even if we cannot yet rejoin it. One of her companions was at the navigation console, not touching it but somehow accessing its data. They found the Prometheus, he said. They boarded it and accessed the final logs. Kira's expression didn't change, but Vex sensed disappointment. That is unfortunate. The Prometheus was meant to sleep undisturbed. Those people chose to avoid what we became. We have honored that choice. What did you become? Vex asked. He was surprised by his own boldness, but he needed to know. If they were going to die here, at least he would die understanding. Kira studied him for a long moment. Come with us. Your crew will remain here unharmed and comfortable, but you, Captain Vex Corridon, have asked the right question. You deserve an answer. Vex looked at Garak, who shook his head slightly. Going with them could be a trap. But staying here wouldn't change anything. These humans could do whatever they wanted. Alone? Vex asked. You may bring one companion if it comforts you. Vex nodded to Garak. The big Krulon picked up his useless rifle out of habit and followed. They walked through the corridors of the Crimson Talon to where the boarding pods had attached. The pods were organic-looking, with walls that seemed to breathe. Inside there were no seats or controls, just a smooth chamber that sealed behind them. This will feel strange, Kira warned. We've learned to move through space in ways that most species find disorienting. The pod moved, but it wasn't like any ship movement Vex had experienced. One moment they were attached to the Crimson Talon. The next they were inside the human vessel. There was no sense of acceleration or travel. They had simply changed location. Garak made a sound like a groan. How? Spatial folding, Kira said. One of many abilities we've developed. This way. The interior of the human ship was beautiful in a disturbing way. The walls glowed with soft light. Everything curved organically, like being inside a living thing. They passed other humans, all moving with that same fluid grace, all with those reflective eyes. Some looked up as they passed, and Vex felt their attention like a physical touch. They entered a large chamber with windows showing the void outside. The Crimson Talon floated nearby, held in place by nothing visible. The Prometheus drifted beyond it, surrounded by the graveyard of ancient ships. 247 years ago, humanity received a signal. Kira began. We still don't know where it came from. Some believe it was a message from a precursor race. Others think it was always inside us, waiting to be activated. The signal triggered something in human DNA, something that had been dormant for millions of years. She touched the window, and images appeared in the glass like a screen. Humans transforming, their bodies changing, developing new abilities. We call it the awakening. It gave us gifts, telepathy, enhanced physical capabilities, the ability to interface directly with technology, something called quantum intuition, a sense that lets us see probable futures. But it came with a terrible cost. The images changed. Cities in ruins, ships torn apart, people screaming. Emotions became dangerous. Anger could manifest as kinetic force. Fear disrupted electronics. Grief created gravitational fields. In the early days, before we learned control, thousands died. Millions. We were destroying ourselves and everything around us. Garak spoke quietly. Why didn't you ask for help? The galaxy would have assisted you. Kira turned to look at him. Would they? Or would they have feared us? Quarantined us? Tried to eliminate the threat? She shook her head. Humanity made a choice. We would isolate ourselves until we learned control, until we were certain we could exist alongside others without danger. The exclusion zone was our gift to the galaxy, a buffer between what we were and what we had become. And the Prometheus? Vex asked. Some couldn't accept the change. Some were too afraid. We gave them the choice to sleep, to wait until we had mastered ourselves. We've kept them safe all these years, waiting for the day we could wake them without fear. Kira looked out at the void. For 2 centuries we have lived here, building a new civilization based on discipline and harmony. We have learned to control what we are. We have grown and evolved, and now we are almost ready. Ready for what? Vex asked. Kira smiled. It was the first genuine expression Vex had seen from her. Ready to come home, ready to rejoin the galaxy we left behind. Vex and Garrick were given quarters on the human ship. The rooms were comfortable but strange, with walls that adjusted their color based on mood and furniture that seemed to reshape itself for their comfort. There were no locks on the doors, but they both knew they were prisoners, even if polite ones. On the second day, Kira came to visit them. She brought food, real food from across the galaxy, not the synthesized meals most ships served. There was Krulon spice bread for Garrick and Zelthari sea fruit for Vex. She had remembered what they would like. "You've been watching us for a long time," Vex said. "We watch everyone," Kira replied, sitting across from them. "We needed to know how the galaxy changed in our absence. What new species joined the Council? What conflicts arose? Who held power? We've been preparing for our return since the day we left." "Why did you bring us here?" Garrick asked. "Why not just erase our memories and send us away?" "Because you asked questions instead of just fighting. Because Captain Vex showed curiosity rather than only fear or greed." Kira leaned forward. "You deserve to understand what you found, and perhaps you can help us." Over the following days, they learned more about what humanity had become. Kira took them through the ship, showing them things that seemed impossible. In one chamber, children were learning to control their abilities. A young girl made objects float with her mind, her concentration visible in the slight furrow of her brow. A boy touched a broken device and it repaired itself, the metal flowing like liquid under his fingers. They laughed and played, their power controlled and safe. "Every human child now learns emotional discipline from birth," Kira explained. "We teach meditation, control, and responsibility before we teach reading or mathematics. It must be this way. Our emotions are weapons if left uncontrolled." In the engineering sections, they saw humans working alongside machines that seemed alive. Technology and biology had merged in ways that made Garrick uncomfortable. Ships grew rather than being built. Computers thought in ways that blurred the line between artificial and natural intelligence. "You integrated with your technology," Vex observed. "We became partners with it," Kira corrected. "The awakening gave us the ability to interface directly with electronic systems. We can feel the ship's sensors as if they were our own senses. We can think alongside artificial intelligence. It's not control. It's cooperation." But the most disturbing demonstration came in a sealed chamber deep in the ship. Kira brought them to observe through reinforced windows. Inside, a single human man stood in an empty room. "This is researcher Chen," Kira said. "He volunteered to show you what happens when we lose control." They watched as Chen closed his eyes and relaxed his discipline. The change was immediate and terrifying. The air around him began to shimmer. Small objects in the room lifted off the ground. The lights flickered and sparked. Chen's face showed strain, then fear, and that fear fed back into his abilities, making everything worse. Alarms blared. The walls of the chamber began to crack. Then just as suddenly it stopped. Chen fell to his knees, breathing heavily. Other humans rushed in to help him. "That was only 5 seconds of lost control," Kira said quietly. "Imagine an entire city of humans losing control at once. Imagine the destruction. That was our reality in the early years of the awakening." Garrick's face was pale. "How many died?" "In the first year? Nearly 1 billion humans. We almost destroyed ourselves." Kira's voice was heavy with old grief. "We had to evacuate Earth 3 times. We lost Mars colony entirely. By the end of the second year, we had learned enough to survive. By the 10th year, we had developed the discipline techniques that let us function safely. But the damage was done. We couldn't risk exposing the rest of the galaxy to that chaos." She led them to an observation deck where they could see deeper into human space. Stations orbited in the distance, massive structures that pulsed with light and energy. "We've built a new civilization here," Kira said, "based on harmony, discipline, and cooperation. We've eliminated poverty, violence, and conflict, not through force but through understanding. When you can feel another person's emotions, it's very hard to hurt them. When you can share thoughts, lies become nearly impossible." "It sounds like paradise," Vex said, though he wasn't sure if that was true. "It's a paradise we created from the ashes of our old civilization," Kira replied. "But it came at a cost. We lost our privacy. We lost our individuality in some ways. Every human is now connected to every other human at a level that would terrify most species. We know what our neighbors are thinking, feeling, experiencing. There are no secrets among us anymore." "Then why come back to the galaxy?" Garrick asked. "Why risk everything you've built?" Kira smiled sadly. Because isolation is its own kind of death. Because we're still human despite everything that's changed. We want to explore, to learn, to share our experiences with others. We want our children to know the diversity of the galaxy, not just the harmony of our own kind. She pulled up images showing humans meeting with representatives of other species. Carefully controlled interactions in neutral zones. We've been making contact slowly, a few individuals at a time. Scientists, diplomats, carefully selected people who can handle the truth. We're preparing the galaxy for our return, making sure that when we come back it won't trigger panic or war. How long until you're ready? Vex asked. Soon. Within the next decade we hope to rejoin the Galactic Council, to reclaim our place among the stars. Kira turned to look at them directly. Which brings us to you. You've seen what we are. You know our secret. Now you must choose. Choose what? Vex asked, though he already knew. Whether to keep our secret or have it erased from your memory. Whether to return to the galaxy knowing what humanity has become, or to forget this ever happened. The choice hung in the air between them like a physical thing. Vex looked at Garrick, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in his first mate's eyes. They had been given a burden that neither wanted, knowledge that could change everything or destroy them. What do the others want? Vex asked. My crew? They voted, Kira said, unanimously. They want their memories altered. They want to forget what they saw here, and remember only that the exclusion zone is dangerous and should be avoided. They're frightened, Captain, and fear is a reasonable response to what they've learned. Vex understood. His crew were criminals, yes, but they were practical criminals. They knew when they were outmatched. They knew when to walk away. This was one of those times. And what do you want from us? Garrick asked Kira. If we keep the knowledge, what then? We're pirates. We're not diplomats or ambassadors. Kira sat down, and for the first time she looked tired. Human. That's exactly why you might be valuable. Diplomats will say what they're supposed to say. They'll follow protocols and procedures, but you understand the underworld of the galaxy. You know the smugglers, the outcasts, the people who operate outside the law. You know how information spreads through the black markets and the shadow networks. She pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy, trade routes and territories marked in various colors. When we return, there will be panic. Some will welcome us, but others will fear us. They'll see us as a threat, as something that needs to be controlled or eliminated. Rumors will spread faster than truth. We need people who understand how those rumors spread, who can counter them before they spiral into violence. Vex laughed, a short, bitter sound. You want pirates to be your public relations team? I want people who understand fear and power to help bridge the gap, Kira corrected. You've spent your life existing between civilizations, taking what you need, avoiding entanglements. You understand how to survive when you're not welcome. That's a skill humanity will need. Garrick shifted his massive bulk. And if we refuse? If we choose to have our memories erased like the others, then you go home with a blank spot in your memory and a strong survival instinct to avoid the exclusion zone. You'll live your lives in peace. No judgment from us. Vex stood and walked to the window. Outside, the stars were the same stars he'd seen his entire life, but now they felt different. Heavier somehow, filled with secrets and possibilities he'd never imagined. I've been a pirate for 20 years, he said quietly. I've stolen, lied, and run from every authority in the galaxy. I've never done anything noble or worthwhile. I've been selfish and greedy and small. He turned to look at Kira. Why would you trust someone like me? Because you came here driven by greed but stayed driven by curiosity, Kira replied. Because when you saw something impossible, you asked questions instead of attacking. Because despite everything you've done, you're still asking yourself if you can be better. That's all we can ask for. Vex looked at Garrick. What do you think? The big Krulon was quiet for a long moment. I think we're being offered a chance to matter. To be part of something bigger than ourselves. I also think it's terrifying and we might fail spectacularly. He showed his tusks in what might have been a smile. But when has that ever stopped us? Vex felt something shift inside him. A decision crystallizing. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Kira raised an eyebrow. Name them. First, you protect my crew. Whatever happens, they go home safe with whatever memories you think are best. Second, you give me resources. If I'm going to help prepare the galaxy for your return, I'll need money, contacts, and information. Third, I want to know the full truth. No more secrets, no more holding back. If I'm going to do this, I do it with full knowledge. Agreed, Kira said without hesitation, though the memories we give your crew will be modified for their protection, not as punishment. They'll remember encountering advanced humans who warned them away from the exclusion zone. They'll remember fear, caution, but not the full details of what humanity has become. Is that acceptable? Vex nodded. One more thing. The Prometheus. Those people chose to sleep rather than change. What happens to them? Kira's expression softened. When we're ready to rejoin the galaxy, we'll wake them. We'll give them the same choice we're giving you, to remember who they were or to learn about what we've become. Some will choose to stay with us. Others may want to leave, to start new lives in the galaxy we left behind. We'll honor whatever they choose. Then I'm in, Vex said. Over the next few days, preparations were made. Vex's crew was processed one by one, their memories carefully adjusted. They would remember being captured, interrogated, and released with a stern warning. They would remember fear and respect for the exclusion zone, but the details would fade like a half-remembered dream. Vex spent hours in what Kira called a teaching chamber, where information was transferred directly into his mind. He learned about humanity's transformation in detail, about their current civilization, about their plans for reintegration. He learned about other liaisons scattered across the galaxy, chosen individuals from various species who were being prepared for the same role. When it was time to leave, Kira walked him to the boarding area. The Crimson Talon had been repaired and improved, though the improvements were subtle enough not to be noticed. Faster engines, better sensors, all disguised to look like normal upgrades. You'll receive instructions through encrypted channels, Kira told him. Small tasks at first, spreading certain stories, making connections with specific individuals. As we get closer to revealing ourselves, the assignments will become more significant. How will I know it's really you contacting me? Vex asked. Kira touched his forehead gently. Vex felt a slight tingle, like static electricity. You'll know. We've left a small marker in your neural pathways. Nothing invasive, nothing that controls you. Just a way for you to recognize authentic human contact. Garrick joined them, looking uncertain. He had chosen to retain his memories as well, unwilling to let Vex face this alone. Take care of him, Kira told the Krulon. This will not be an easy path. It never is, Garrick rumbled. They boarded the Crimson Talon and prepared to depart. As they crossed back into normal space, leaving the exclusion zone behind, Vex looked back one last time. The human ship had already disappeared, melting back into the darkness like it had never been there. On the bridge, his crew moved around as if nothing unusual had happened. Mira reported clean scans ahead. Skeet plotted a course back to known space. TV worked on routine maintenance. They remembered being caught and released. They remembered fear, but not understanding. Vex sat in his captain's chair and accessed his private communications array. He began composing a message carefully coded and encrypted. It would go to a contact he'd never met, at coordinates that had been placed in his memory. The message was simple. The humans are coming back, and we need to be ready, not for war but for what comes after. He sent the message and deleted all traces of it from the ship's computer. Garrick stood beside him. Any regrets? Vex thought about it. About the life he'd lived, the choices he'd made. About the impossible things he'd seen and the even more impossible task ahead of him. Ask me again in 10 years, he said. Somewhere in the darkness behind them, humanity prepared for its return. They had been gone for 2.5 centuries, learning to master the power they'd been given. Now they were ready to come home, and Vex Corridon, pirate and thief, had somehow become one of the people responsible for making sure the galaxy was ready to receive them. The stars looked the same as always. But Vex knew better now. Nothing was the same. Everything was about to change, and for the first time in his life he was going to be part of something that mattered.